I tell everyone that I hire, you're gone in 2 years. I tell everyone. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I am firing you in 2 years, and I'm rehiring your LLC, and I'm going to be working with someone that you taught how to do what you're doing now.
Move over, baby boomers. It's time for Gen XYZ. It's time to stop waiting on the world to change. It's time to be the change. It's time to stop thinking about how your life can be better. It's time to start taking action, massive action to improve your life. Join Zach Winter and Markadare Rios every week as we learn how others have the grit, determination, and conviction to 10x their lives, and as we explore ways that can help you 10x your life.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of the 10X for Gen XYZ podcast. I'm Zach Winter.
And I'm Markadare Rios.
And today as our guest, we have our good friend, Diego Torres-Palma. I first met Diego at Lambda Alpha, a global land economic society. He's a great guy. He's got a very interesting past. He's a civil engineer. He's got an MBA, and he was in the tech industry for a while before he transitioned into development. And now he owns and operates his own development company called Ventana Ventures.
Yeah, and we actually started our interview with Diego early this time. And so now we're going to jump in today, just midstream, as he talks about how he manages his Instagram feed and also uses his Instagram to promote his popular podcast.
Yeah, so enjoy the podcast.
So let's jump back on in terms of your Instagram profile and how you're kind of going about, defining your metrics and watching your metrics and all that stuff, because it's really interesting conversation. I don't know anything about it, and I've been on computers for a while, and now even the knowledge is expanding just exponentially, even beyond my Gen X, mindset. It's crazy.
I'll just say at the beginning of it all, like with Instagram, when I first got on Instagram, I was, so just to back up, I was in tech for a while, and when I was in tech, we would send our investors a quarterly investor update effectively. And so all the executives would get together, we would pour over this document for what felt like a week in terms of time. And we'd pump it out and nobody would read it, is what we found out, or like very few investors would read it. And so I was always getting upset. And then when I got out of tech and moved to, when I launched my real estate development company, I was like, there's got to be a better medium, right? Maybe it's not the PDF. Maybe it's the fact that the medium is bad. And so I literally just started my Instagram account to basically tell any of my investors in my deals, hey, if you need to see what's going on without talking to me, follow me on Instagram. That was literally all I was solving for. And so I tell that story candidly because it didn't come from a place of, oh, I want followers, or, oh, I want fame. It was more of like, I just want my investors to know what's happening without them talking to me, because I think that's important, right? It's an easy, free check-in. And so sure enough, if you go to my Instagram, it's like the brewery, the first brewery project, demo, like just photos. And then at some point I'm like, why don't we make video to make it more engaging, like HGTV style videos? So then I hired my buddy Nick, and I was paying him some money to put together these like thoughtful videos that are super well edited and just well produced. Turns out we put those videos on Instagram, they did pretty well. And then at some point the city was also sharing our videos. So the city of Bell was sharing the videos on their Facebook page for their community. And so that now I was like little by little, just like amassing kind of a following very niche to the city of Bell or to Southeast LA. And at the beginning, it was very awkward. It was like, who is this guy talking about, demolition, like really boring stuff in the grand scheme of things, right? And then people, like by the third episode, they realized, oh, he's taking us on a journey. Oh, he's going to let us know when the grand opening is, which is really what anyone wants to know. That's really it. Right. And so it was like an easy way, just to kind of bring it back. I was solving for letting my investors know what's up, but at the same time, the community got on board because they want to know when we're going to open. And so it was like a perfect marriage of, I'm solving this problem, but it happens to be solving a bigger issue for the community. And then by the time we had our last video, the city was just like thankful, because they said, I guess cities in general deal with this thing where they get a lot of heat because the reputation gets tarnished if projects don't open immediately. And what they don't realize, like what the average person doesn't realize, is like we have to meet fire code. We have to do all these inspections. We're dealing with the city for sewer or water, right? Or the fire department. And so in our videos, we explained all that, which I thought was just like me literally spewing the facts like a news anchor. But to the city, they were like, no one's ever done this before. So thank you for highlighting to the community that it's not us, the big bad city hall. It's like the fire department has a role here, the sewer department, right? And so it was like, it's just cool that, you know, the idea was, again, show the investors what's up via social media. And then that turned into something totally different, which was
very transparent, and then all of your stakeholders become very appreciative.
Yeah, which was awesome. And so that's really my beginnings with the whole Instagram stuff.
Now,
go ahead, Zach. I just had a quick question.
I was going to how you decided to focus on Instagram versus Facebook or Twitter or YouTube.
I just liked, so the problem was I wasn't on Instagram. And so like if you think about it, on Facebook, it felt like, oh, friend me on Facebook. That feels like a lot. It feels like a second date. Whereas follow me on Instagram feels like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. I'll give you a follow. I follow 1,000, 2,000, 20,000 other people anyway. So it felt lightweight. And Twitter, I just really never connected with Twitter. When I was in tech, I used Twitter a lot and, you know, had a little bit of a following.
Yeah.
But it was mostly like VC valuations, super tech insider stuff, like kind of boring biohacking, why coffee, nootropics, adaptogens, all this San Francisco culture stuff. But Instagram was just like, it's a quick photo. That's all it is. It's a photo. Here's day one of demo. That's it. I don't need to overthink it. That's it.
It seems particularly relevant for your line of business where, you know, it's real estate development related. So photography and video really plays out well with that type of business.
I mean, the thing is, so it's an interesting position because my wife, who has a construction company, who is in all of my deals, she doesn't post anything related to her projects. And so I always look at it like the eye is in the beholder, or the beauty's in the eye of the beholder. For me, I look at construction like, why wouldn't I share this? She looks at it as like, why am I sharing my headaches with the world? Right? And so because of that, she doesn't share anything. Like she just shares like pictures of her or pictures of us on vacation. Like you could maybe extrapolate she's the CEO of a construction company by looking at her Instagram. You look at my Instagram, they're like, he's a podcaster for sure. He's definitely a developer. And, you know, he loves his family. Like that's it. That's your takeaways.
Isn't that, without getting too kind of pre-planned about it though, isn't that, I heard somebody say, you know, mix it up, right? Try not to always do too many posts back to back about your business, throwing, you know, hey, we just ate some waffles down the road and things like that. I mean, how do you feel about that in terms of spicing it up? Or
so the way I phrase this to people is, today you could go to college and major in social media, which means that when this whole thing first started, yes, you could totally post pictures of waffles. If you want to be relevant today, those days are gone. So even for myself, who started using Instagram 4 or 5 years ago with pictures of my projects, that recipe it's gone now. It doesn't matter. No one's going to win using that strategy if winning means getting a following. And so today you have to produce these short form videos. You have to add music on it. And so like once I recognized that, and we started the podcast about 2 years ago, I just hired a social media team. I wasn't even trying to mess around. Like I felt like the boomer in the room. I felt like my grandfather when I was watching these 20, 19-year-olds play with Instagram. Like I was like, oh, they're looking at, like, they know it. They know it. They have like the finger on the pulse. It's like when you watch a great artist, you know, they really know it in a way that, frankly, I don't even, it would be hard for me to get to that level when it seems so natural to them. Right. And so I was like, I'm just going to hire people under 23, call me an ageist, but that understand these platforms way better than I do. And that's probably the best thing we've ever done, because the algorithm's changing every other week. And they're on it. They know what's happening. They know why it's changing. And it sounds crazy, but like, as you start getting closer and closer and closer to the algorithm or to the creator community, you start to really understand even like the future of where Instagram is going. And
interesting.
And so that's why we hired a team, because now it's like, they're just crushing it. Like we're doing Reels all the time now. Instagram's promoting them. My personal account, this sounds crazy. It sounds crazy to say this. My personal account, Instagram reached out to me, Instagram, the company, reached out to me and said, we will pay you based on the number of views if you post unlimited number of Reels between now and November 26th. And so I was like, hey, team, my social media team, let's make some reels,
do.
and I'll put it on my gram. And so I think like to date, I have like $180 worth of free money, frankly. But like Instagram, the company is paying creators, and I just happen to be one of them. And that's crazy to me. Like that's crazy, but that's all because of the team. That has really like, it's crazy. You know, I don't.
It sounds, that's part of what you were saying. The shift that Instagram is making is more towards video and not still imaging.
Yeah, like TikTok. TikTok's the obvious example where it's like quick, super engaging, funny, dramatic, motivational post, and then we're on to the next.
Mm-hmm.
You actually touched on something that actually is really important. I didn't think we might even get to something like this, but like, you know, oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we get in this position where, you know, whether it's because we have to, you know, we're the cook and the bottle washer and the dishwasher and all of the things, and delegating out certain things is really, really important. And sometimes when you can do things, or you feel like you can do things better, having somebody take over and having the wherewithal and saying, you know what, I can see the future of what I'm doing here on Instagram. I know it's totally beneficial. Let's hire these youngsters to just take care of it. And I just throw them every once in a while, throw them videos or things like that, but let them run with it. It's really, really important, you know, and probably a lot of people talk about, hey, I want to hire a VA, you know, but I think this social media thing too, if it can be kind of wrapped into the cost side of things, is important as well.
I give people this example, and like, unfortunately, it's not seen this clearly, but I think everyone needs to start viewing life in a very clear way. So, as an example, all three of us, real estate developers. Yeah, all agree. Yeah. Okay, cool. Do you hire an architect or do you play architect?
Hire, baby.
Okay.
Hire.
Do you hire a lawyer or do you play lawyer?
Well,
right. And so my point is, like, in development, you are taught a very valuable lesson, which is you cannot be the architect, you cannot be the civil engineer, structural engineer, you can't be any of that, you can't be the GC, and you can't be your lawyer. And so in that game, what do? Oh, I just go out and hire. So to me, it's kind of arrogant to think, oh, I could figure out social media. That's like you saying I could figure out architecture. And I just think like, and I say arrogance, and I know how it sounds, but I'm saying it for a reason, because I want people to really understand, like, just because you think you can be good at sales or be a good coder, that's really you living in some arrogant world, or maybe you are that talented. But I think at the end of the day, there's like, I have to trust my architect, so I have to learn how to delegate. Now let's just apply that to everything in life. Understand what you're good at, just do that, stay in your lane. Like, I'm good at talking to people, podcasting, but I'm definitely not good at cutting up this episode or posting it on social media. And so I have to hire the experts that exist. And so what I do end up spending a lot of time in is not so much delegating, but making sure I'm not hiring people for jobs, but I'm hiring people for passions. And so I tell everyone that I hire, you're gone in 2 years. I tell everyone. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I am firing you in 2 years, and I'm rehiring your LLC, and I'm going to be working with someone that you taught how to do what you're doing now. And if you haven't figured that out, you're gone. That's it. Yeah. And it sounds so harsh, but you know, we just talked about this on the podcast with this investor, and he looks at the world the same way. So it's kind of scary, because I'm like, we're either both very wrong or like we have it right. Who knows? Time will tell. And he calls it sovereign agency. He's like, what the world needs to solve for is everyone wants to be their own sovereign agent. That's it. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think developers, we have that, right? We're really good at staying in our lane. We're not trying to play architect. We're not trying to play lawyer. We're just like, no, that we stay in our lane. And so I think if we can apply that same philosophy to life, it makes like the importance of hiring anybody in the skill set. It's super important. And I know some people get locked in this stage of like, oh, but I don't have the money to do it. And I just think like capitals, you have to reanalyze your relationship with money.
Totally.
That's right.
You know, you really have to do that too.
There's two additional things though, going back to the arrogant, because that was actually the first thing that I had in my mind. I just didn't say it. And then you said it, is, you know, there's that Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Like you don't know everything, but you might think that you know everything, for lack of a better kind of description. But the other side of it is, for guys like us, you know, I'm definitely, I said, I'm a Gen Xer, you know, approaching my mid 50s. and I've been around a little bit. And so the social media thing, there's a little bit of a lack of respect for the people that do it really, really well. So the attorneys that you talk about, or the architects that you talk about, automatically they're professionals. They got credentials, the whole bit. But my first thought, and this is just me, and I'll probably get a lot of flack for saying this, but then you're straightening me out. My first thought is not to have that same kind of respect for kids that are doing social media at a high level.
Yeah.
Like, and when it comes to business, that's a blind spot for me, actually, when I think about it.
Yeah. And I think just like anything, like if you were to hire one architect, right? You've probably worked with, let's say, 10 before you found the one you liked, or maybe 2 or 3 before you found I know I have a go-to now, and we tried a bunch, and it's not only who works best with me, but it's who works best with my GC, more importantly, right? Because at some point I'm completely out of it. And then you got to pick the one that works best for the overall team. And so when it comes to social media or hiring of any kind, it's the same. It's like there's a lot of fluff out there. There's a tremendous amount of people, young and old, coming out of colleges or university, are looking for internships, and they want to put on their resume like, hey, I'm going to be your social media expert. And they're not. Like, we went through 2 of them and they were awful. I'm like, and here's the thing, right? So I look at it like, if I look at art, I have a feeling around whether it's good or bad. Now, am I an artist? Absolutely not. But I have a feeling around whether it's good or bad. When I look at social media and I say I could do that, I'm firing that person, right? So just like an architect, right? If an architect put together a rendering for you, and you were like, "Are you kidding? Like I could have done that," you would fire them. You'd be like, you wouldn't, like, don't go crazy. You would just, respond to something and be like, I'm out. And so I think with social media, it's the same thing. If they're posting pictures and that's all they're doing, that's nothing that I couldn't do. And so in that case, I'm just trading time for money, where they're saving me time. Right. And so this has to be above that. You have to be putting content out that is also saving you time, but more importantly, is like content you look at and you're like, oh wow, that's like really good.
Yeah. So they're responsible for taking for example, the raw footage from a podcast, and they need to go through there and find the really interesting tidbits, the nuggets, and then they need to cut that into some engaging type of video with some imagery and some music background, and then post it on the various social media platforms, or at least on Instagram.
Yeah, all the social media. So they're also testing TikTok. It's on LinkedIn. It's on Facebook. But it's also like, we create 4 days, 5 days of content for any guest that comes on our podcast. And so on day 1, let's say Tuesday. So on Monday, we have 5 stories getting posted about what's coming, the new episode. So that's all free marketing for the episode that's about to drop for the company that's going to come on. Tuesday, the episode drops. Now we have like 5 to 10 stories about that. Wednesday, we have a clip. What we're trying to work on now, and we've been pretty good at it, is if the episode drops Tuesday, we will do a giveaway, giving away their product for free to our listeners on Thursday. And so what you see on Thursday is a reel. And so it almost looks like, it's honestly like a television commercial, 30 seconds around the product, and then like enter a comment to win the product that you just heard the story about the founding of. And then Friday, it's another reel. And so basically I hate to get businessy, because to me, this is more like an art, but basically the way I look at it is like, what's our job? What are we solving for? Right? And what I'm solving for is, I want people to approach entrepreneurship through a new lens, and I want them not to be afraid of it. In that, I also want to be the best PR company that the founder I just spoke to could have ever talked to. I want him to walk away being like, that was the best podcast ever, because Diego knows what he's talking about, because his team just gave us a week's worth of content for free. And if we can all say content is king, and they didn't pay for that, then now we've struck a chord. And I even go as far to say, as my social media team, I want them to get hired by every guest that comes on. I want them to be so good that when they start sharing our content, people at that company go, who's doing this content? And it makes them feel bad. I want them to feel awful about that their content isn't to the level of the podcast they just came on. Like, that's what I'm solving for.
I love it.
And so that's why we go full with it. We go, let's go full circle. Let's do giveaways. Let's do collaborations. And I tell everyone that comes on, like, you're going to get a week's worth of PR for what cost you maybe an hour and a half of time and 30 minutes of emails.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
That's a great system. I think yeah.
And it's working. I mean, now we have brand partnerships. We did a brand partnership with Cat Footwear. We just wrapped one up with Chobani. And so, I think what we've recognized, and I hope this gives people like some safe, so like, I hope it gives people an awareness of what's happening in the world. If you go to like Chobani's Instagram, and I know that they just wrote us a check, but if you go to their Instagram, it's just pictures of their products. And just like I said earlier, that's not good enough today.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, like they need to figure that out. And there's a lot of companies that we've all heard of that we probably ingest their products daily that are in that, they're caught in that just posting pictures. And that doesn't work anymore. And so
it's shocking because they're a huge corporate entity, right?
I look at it like it's not shocking because corporate entities, no matter how big they are still run by people that have fears or blind spots. Yeah. And so it's all the same, right? And so the blind spots are,
It's the same thing that I was just talking about. There are people like me at Chobani who have that same exact thing, and they don't have that healthy respect for it.
I got laughed at by tons of finance guys when I would be like, go on my Instagram, check out my projects. They're like, what are you doing making videos for your project? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, you're investing time and money into doing that. And I was like, okay, you don't get it. It's not for you. But they were literally like, what's the ROI on that? And I'm like, what's the ROI of art? What's the ROI of good design? Like it's not tangible, but it's an intangible. And so, not everybody gets it until they get it.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back just real quick.
Yeah.
Go back to like the beginning when you were talking about the reason why you started your Instagram page and you wanted a way to be able to communicate with your investors without talking with them.
Yeah.
And to get a little cheeky here, from whose side was that? Was that because you were doing quarterly updates and it was very kind of businessy, and the questions that they were asking could have been better told through this medium? Or was it you wanted to get rid of your quarterly updates altogether and you were trying to find another way to give them the same the information, right? Because for us, we have investors and we definitely do quarterly updates. But as we add more and more properties on, it starts to be very, very difficult, especially in that quarterly time period when we have a whole week of, video webinars and decks to put together and financials to gather and all of that stuff. And so we've actually slowed some of that down where we could, where we didn't promise.
But wait, let me stay with me here. So we're going to go down this road since you brought it up. So I'm going to ask you some dumb questions and we're just going to get to it. Why do you do that? Why do you continue to do that? Why do you do the quarterly updates still?
Well, we still do the quarterly updates because we said that we were for the investors that we have in our pool, we said that we would update them, and they asked us specifically, what our update schedule was. So we stay with that for each deal, but each deal that is new, we revisit that.
Okay. And they could be quarterly updates. We actually have a deal where we give a monthly update.
Yeah.
And it's essentially a 2-page document that summarizes what's going on with the investment. And I honestly think, though, that the investors are very appreciative of getting that and being informed and knowing what's going on with their investment.
Do you think they all read them?
No, I don't think they all read them. Okay. Every time we send it out, though, we get some positive feedback. But I would guess probably at least 40%, 50% don't read them, you know. But just the fact that they're getting them is a security blanket. They know that we're reaching out and we're communicating with them and letting them know what's going on with their investment. But it's a very different type of communication than Instagram, where we're communicating with everybody who wants to listen. These are targeted just for our investors. And I can certainly see having both, right? We send a detailed report to our investors, but then we're also updating everybody on Instagram in a much shorter, video.
And then also your question too, just now, to be quite, it's also the reason why we started out doing it is because that's the way we were trained.
Right.
We were trained to do quarterly or monthly updates, usually video webinars, but that's how we were taught, and so there is a little bit of a residual effect there too.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's a little bit different. So for me, when I was in tech and I was managing a sales team, my whole thing was I want to communicate without communicating. That was always my thing. Like, I don't need to talk to Mark about the deal he's slicing and dicing. I should be able to go on Salesforce. I should be able to see that he took good notes because he's doing his job right. And if Mark is sick for 2 months or gets COVID, I should be able to know exactly where this deal is, and I can take it over without having him basically involved in the deal, or me bothering him while he's at home because his wife just had the baby, or because he's sick. So that was my whole mantra. Was I've always just wanted to communicate without communicating. It was always my thing. And so when I got into real estate, it was like kind of what you're saying, like all these rules of the road, all these quarterly, like none of that made any sense to me. I'm like, you want to see how I'm doing? Come to the bar, come to the brewery, see how they're doing. You want to see how we're doing? Come to the coffee shop. Are you getting checks in the mail? Yes or no? And I know like some of this is SEC related and we have to provide some sort of updates, and we do that. We do it, but it's just like, I just pump it out. And sometimes I just wish there was a dash where people could log into, and it's like, here's your income statement, here's the balance sheet. And it's something that gets like what I have now, what I have my accountant send out like I think they do it quarterly, where I just have them do it. I just like, here, send it to the investors. Because if the investors want to dig into the numbers, go ahead. And if they have any questions, ask the accountants. Like, right. I'm there for high level stuff. I don't want to be involved in like, oh, I saw the COGS went up like, stop. I heard lumber prices went up. Like, great. I don't care. Like, what are you talking about? Right.
Yeah.
Like, are you getting a check? Does it look good? Okay, cool. Are you being greedy now? And so I think, we keep our investors up to date on, like, if I'm sharing an email, it's usually I'm sharing the ugly, is the way I think about it. Like, I'm letting you know things when you need to know them because it's not going well. And so I sent an email out maybe 2 months ago being like, look, lumber prices are up 40%. We're getting hammered on plumbing. Just keeping everybody posted. If anyone wants to double down, now's the time. Thank you. That's the email. It's not, I don't know. I just have a different approach with it because it's like, I think the problem I have, and I say this like literally as a problem, is I'm always trying to solve for time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm trying to solve for. And so if I'm putting energy into something, I ask myself, what's the yield of this? And if the yield is 50% of the people will read it, I'm out. Like, my brain just goes, nope, not doing that. And it's not like I do not doing that, I'm lazy. I go, how do I get the yield up? Right? And so when it comes to Instagram or whatever you do, so Reels have high yield. So 1 minute clip videos have super high yield on Instagram. Let's do that.
Interesting.
And so I kind of programmed my brain to go with yield. And if I know 60% or even 30% of people won't open an investor update, I'm out. And what's even more annoying is the 70% of people that do open it, I'm going to get 2 emails that are really stupid questions. Stupid in my world, right? And I'm just going to be like, okay, here's the stupid answer. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't have it's more of a me thing, frankly. Right. I'm just aware enough to know, like, this is kind of my mindset, and my mindset just goes to yield. And me sending out an investor update to me isn't high yield. Like, I should be finding the next deal, or I should be figuring out how to create alpha somewhere else, right? Or
you should be delegating it to somebody if you feel that it's worthwhile to keep the investors informed at whatever frequency.
Yeah.
And you find that it's not worth your time, it's something to delegate.
Yeah. Our accounting firm does it. They do all the financials, and I just, usually go, everything is great, or this is on fire, and then that's it.
Yeah, for sure.
You well, let's talk, because I Zach introduced you to me, and I really don't know a lot about kind of your story and how you kind of got started in entrepreneurship. Do you mind just talking a little bit about that?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So I went to school for civil engineering, and I did that because I had like family members who told me if I do that, I'd get a pretty good job out of college. I'm just being super candid, super linear, very straightforward. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll go to school for civil engineering. And it was hard. But then I became like a badge of honor. Like, oh, I went through all this math and science, and the world must think I'm smart now. And so then I graduate, and everyone's right. I have a upper middle class salary, And at some point of my job, I asked my boss, like, hey, how much do you make? Which I know it's taboo and everyone's like, how could you even do that? But I'm just an inquisitive human. And so I asked him and he told me, and I think he said he makes like 160 and he had like $50,000 in bonuses every year. And so it's like kids went to private school and I was like 160. I mean, I was like, what are we talking about? So then I set up a meeting with the president of the company. Again, sounds crazy, right? Who would do that? What 21-year-old has the audacity to ask the president for a meeting? But he took the meeting and I was like, how much do you make? And he was an MIT guy. He went to MIT for business school. And so he told me like how he bought into the business and now he runs it. And he told me his salary and he was like very open. But he told me he made like 300 something thousand. And I was like, this is awful. I was like, I have to take his job to be happy, right? Or to be satisfied, not happy. What are the odds of that? And so once that became clear to me, I started just, okay, I need equity. Where do I get equity? How quickly can I get it? And it became, you have to start your own company. That was really it. Mm-hmm. And so I just started dabbling with different ideas around like, could I make a company? And what was weird was like, I never thought about failure or like the success rate. I just thought this is the only way. That was it. I just thought about it that way. And so we started this fashion bow tie tech company, which was fun. And like really just my first dabble into doing my own thing.
Was it something where did you do it as a side gig initially with your friends or early partners, and then it turned into something? Yeah, just friends, and it was a side gig, and then it became so much more than that, which was really cool. And everyone asks, like, when do you know when your side gig or your side hustle becomes a full-time job? And the answer is like, like once you're doing it all the time, it's not like, oh, I did 6 hours today, it must be full-time now. That's not it. It's like you're just doing 100%. Stuff for this business all the time. It just kind of takes you with it. And then from there, did a data analytics company and in parking data analytics. And so then I learned like the tech game, and I learned getting venture funding from Silicon Valley. And so I think it was really just a journey. Frankly, it was like, it started really small, like anything like a pebble. And then as time went on, it became something else. And I've just done things that I would say I don't have any permission to do, right? And so I think in society, we live in this world of, I need permission to do things. And in some worlds you do, like you have to become a medical resident, and then in order to become a doctor. And so that permission is laid forth and it's simple and it's linear. Whereas in like my world, like no one had to give me permission to go into fashion. I just did it. And then no one had to give me permission to go to San Francisco and start a tech company. We just did it. And no one gave me permission to be a developer, right? It's the same thing. It's like, I just want to create and do cool things. And for me, it was like, I was always accumulating new skills and then trying to use those skills for the next thing. Right. And so with bow ties, it was like, I learned like branding and selling and marketing and Instagram to some extent, or social media at the time, no Instagram. And then with tech, I learned like VC funding and growth and sales metrics and managing a team and having a company. And then I was like, okay, cool. How do I merge all that? And then it was like real estate development kind of became that thing where it's raising capital, putting together projects, doing deals, managing some people, but at the same time, while also doing things like understanding what I didn't like about those past lives and not doing those again. So I hated managing a team. Like I really hated managing people. It was awful. It was like, I don't care about your Tinder date. I don't care that you're hungover. I don't care that she didn't text you back. Like I'm not that guy. And there are plenty of people that are those people. I'm just not that guy. I'm like, I'm just here to work and let's crank. And like, I don't care about anything else. And maybe that makes me whatever. I was like, that's just me. And so in real estate development, it's great because nobody really works for you, right? They work for you on the project. That's also why, to go back to the podcast, that's why I tell them they're going to be fired in 2 years, because it's like, I want to create entrepreneurs. I'm coming from a world of, I want to create more of me's or more of us's and more entrepreneurs. I don't want to be in a society where I'm giving jobs to people.
Yeah. Because that's a great mindset. You're lifting them up. You're helping them advance their own careers.
I think so, but sometimes it comes across as like, it sounds crazy. And I see it in people's faces when I say it. They're like, oh my God, that's like terrifying. But I like that. I like that it terrifies them.
You're giving them a real strong pattern interrupt, but I'm sure you're explaining, the whole thing. I want to fire you in 2 years. You're going to be gone. Really kind of shocks them into listening to the next part of that, which is basically you need to start your own business and train people to replace you so that you can do better, bigger and better things. I want to scale with you.
What's cool too is they're already doing it. Like I'm telling you, they already have, this month they're 21 and 23 and they'll make 10 grand each this month from projects that they've gotten from the podcast. And now she's like, one of them is hiring people under her. She has not even graduated college yet. She graduates in May. That's awesome. So like great. they're already doing it. And that's like, that part of it is exciting. And then I'm like, don't forget that your employees need to live the same way, right? Like keep it moving, keep it going.
Yeah. That's cool that I've been kind of formulating this thing, and maybe I heard it somewhere, so maybe it's not really my own idea, but this idea of, you have to, and maybe it goes back to Kiyosaki, but you have to get equity in things. Owning a business, investing, which if you follow Warren Buffett, when you buy stocks, you're an owner of that company. So you got to start thinking about those companies that you're buying stocks in from that perspective. And what was the other one? Starting a business and real estate, owning real estate, of course, is another kind of an equity oriented type of venture. But all of those really have the opportunity to generate exponential wealth for the people that learn how to do it and can, make it happen for themselves.
So I thought
that's neat.
Yeah, the two biggest things I've learned in my lifetime, and this is paraphrasing some other great people, but one is equity. And so like whatever you can do to get equity, go do that immediately. And then number two is levers. And so start to understand that a podcast is a lever. YouTube works while I sleep. That's a lever, right? And so you can piggyback off the levers that have already been built by giants. Humans are a lever. Employees are a lever. For us, architects are levers. Architects can not only do our projects, they could also bring projects to us. And so humans become levers. And so it's almost like the more, like Elon Musk, people always ask like, oh, how does he do what he does every day? And he's got all these companies and all that. Homeboy is a lever machine. All he does is build levers. His $6 billion plug to get the UN to solve world hunger, that's the biggest lever I've ever seen in my life. Oh, they're going to talk about it? Cool. Here's $6 billion. Do it. Right. Lever. Right. What is he? Is he at the meetings? Zero. Is he involved? Maybe he's got one person on his team checking email for that specific cause, but he's not involved at all until the dinner table is set, and then he'll sit down for 2 hours. He'll look at the plan. That's a lever. And so like my brain, is really moving in the direction of understanding levers. Mm-hmm. And usually it means getting out of your own way and understanding a lever exists, and you just have to put it in play. And so whether it's a podcast or whether it's real estate development, money's a lever. Money's a great, most obvious lever, right? You can invest in 100 things, have ownership of 100 things, but maybe you're in the day-to-day of one of those 100 things.
Yeah. And we're really talking about figuring out how to not trade your time for money, but to use these various levers to create money.
Yeah. And what I dig about hearing your story and kind of diving deep a little bit on it too is, and this is something that I meet people all the time. And with my background in entertainment industry, I never really thought about it because I was so young. When I got into the industry on that end, I was just so young and dumb. It didn't matter if I took action, right? I wasn't thinking in terms of risk or, what's going to happen. It's like, I want to do it. Let's go. Mm-hmm. Now, probably I'd think about it, but I love some of your perspective because you're telling us that, you just, you really took action at certain points when you were starting those businesses and even taking action, walking into that seat, that president's door to ask him some questions. A lot of people inch their way up to the door and then turn around, or they sit at the door for a long time with their hands out or whatever it is. And that taking action is so important, man. And I know I can say that in a lot of ways from this side, but I don't know. I tell people like, I'm just super selfish about my time. Like I'm probably the most selfish person you'll ever meet around their time. And if
Like my wife always, she'll say like, I love you. And I'm like, oh, I love you too. And she's like, yeah, but sometimes I don't know that. And I'm like, I give you all my time. And I say that honestly. Like, I'm like, I could literally choose to give anyone else my time or anything else my time. And the fact that I give it to you, like, that's my currency, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not like this whole money thing. I don't care about it. It's like, and it's not because I have it or because I don't have it. I just never cared about it. I just recognized that it was always like gas in a car tank, right? And so if you and I set out right now, we're like, let's go to Malibu, and the car's empty, we need to get gas. How do we get it? That problem could take a minute to figure out if I have a credit card. That problem, if I had no money, could take a couple days to figure out. But the point of the journey isn't to get gas. It's to go to Malibu. You see what I'm saying? Right. And so,
Right.
you know, I think the currency is time. And so for me, I've just been always really selfish about that. And in that, I'm a protector. I'm really cognizant of where I spend it. And if it doesn't feel right, I won't do it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, it's the one commodity you can't make more of, right? It's very limited how much time in your life.
Yeah. And I think it also makes me like a better worker. Like it makes me way more efficient to some extent.
Oh,
but
yeah.
it makes me hire people. Like that's the other beautiful thing about it. As scary as that is, it just makes me find the right team. And so I put time into finding those people. And once I know I have the 120 percenters, which is what I call everyone on the team, then that's it. Then I know I don't have to do anything anymore. I don't have to spend my time managing you.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's almost
I think the busier you get, the more stuff you have on the plate, the better you get at time management.
Yeah.
And the better you get at being efficient in what you're doing. And hopefully the better you get at recognizing what you can and need to delegate to free up more time.
Totally.
Yeah.
And hopefully you have good partners too, to kind of not even just lean on, but also to be able to go, okay, it looks like both of us are a little bit stretched too thin. Let's figure this out, and let's figure out how we can chip off some of this non-productive work that we're doing to somebody else,
Yeah.
So in terms of your development company, the podcast, it sounds like it's going fantastic. Your social media stuff, with the stuff you're doing, right? Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing right now. I know you have the brewery down in Brea, right? And then what else are you working on?
Yeah, we're doing a brewery cider house in Lincoln Heights right now. Hopefully that'll be open by beginning of January. The tenant moves in next month in December. And so then they have to just start cranking the beer manufacturing. And once they have enough beer, we'll have the grand opening. We just closed on a office building in Pasadena. And so that's going to be a liver research center for the California Liver Research Institute. And then a good friend of mine, Dr. Mena, it's basically his practice as well. And now we're on the hunt for the next thing.
Nice.
And so it's interesting. I view real estate development like albums, like a musician would view an album.
Mm-hmm.
And you have producers, you have a whole team. Like I think Jay-Z gets credit for his albums, but there's probably 100 people that have touched, his album. And so
totally.
I think about it very similarly. And on the podcast, so I'm in the podcast studio now. There's a coffee truck in the front. That was our other development we did. When I think about the number of people that collaborated on here, the artists that did the mural behind here, the Farm Cup team, the city, people that have come on the podcast, what I realize is like the more people that you have touch your product in their expert way, the better the product is. And so I'm trying to bring that mindset for the next thing we're doing. And so whether it's with you guys or something else, just kind of, but viewing it like almost like an art. I think the science of development is easy, right? I think like structuring a good deal is easy. I think raising capital is easy. I think the hard part is getting it right and making sure people get it, like the community understands what you've tried to pull off. Mm-hmm. And so
I love that. What's really cool about the Benny Boy Brewing Company development that you're doing in Lincoln Heights is you're kind of revitalizing that area in that it used to have a Pabst Blue Ribbon brewery, like in that same neighborhood.
Yeah, across the street. Yeah, 41 years ago, the Pabst Blue Ribbon closed down.
Yeah, which is just a famous beer. So it's really cool that you're bringing a brewery back to that area.
I think
now,
so.
Is that the one on the other side of the freeway where
Yeah.
the artist community is now?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, right
And so
across.
those people are actually probably going to be your customers when you open them up, right? The people that are living in the lofts over there, correct?
You know, some of them
sure.
hate me. Some of them hate me, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Really?
Right.
Yeah, you know, I
Why
mean,
is
you guys know this. In any development, it's like there's always going to be this the classic word is gentrification, but
Yeah, right.
the reality of the word means improvement. You always have these people who are not wanting any form of improvement, and they'll attack you for any reason. So they'll attack you for not being born in the community that you're trying to improve. They'll attack you for things they may have read, like, oh, you kicked out all these people, you displaced all these people, which none of this stuff is true. And so it's
Right.
just that specific community, for whatever reason, just went in on like, no, we're not going to support this
Interesting.
Yeah,
thing.
it's crazy
And
too, because was kind of a blighted location, right? By the freeway. It's not
it was a
you had
chop
to
shop.
displace anybody.
I mean,
Yeah,
literally,
and
like,
you're literally revitalizing it. So you kicked out the crime, and you're revitalizing the area with a really cool craft brewery and cider house.
I think so. I mean, like, I think so. What's cool is like whenever we start a development, there's always like graffiti sometimes or street art on these buildings, and I reach out to all of them saying like, hey, at some point we might have to paint over your art. How can we collaborate, or how can we do something to work together to salvage some art, whether it's inside the brewery or whether we commission a mural from you guys. And so we're very proactive on that front, and that's what made it so cool. It's like all the street artists worked with us, and I got to meet a lot of them, and they brought me to their warehouses, and I asked them like, how do you view what you do? Like, how do you view what you do? And they're like, really, we're just culture. Like, we understand the culture before people get it. And so what happened before it hits the mainstream. And so what they all said was like, what ends up happening is we're creating culture in terms of like this type of signature or this geometry of art. And people hate us, right? He's like, people, like, we got arrested, cities hate us, they think we're tagging, defacing all this stuff. It's like, we're not. We're just showcasing culture as we see it. And what's funny is like, you'll see that art in 5 years, 10 years on t-shirts, on sneakers. And so when I understood, how they live and their mindset of, they're just really connected to community and culture, and the rest of us that get angry are not. And so I think about that in some way of like what we do as developers. It's like me bringing the cider house brewery is exactly what you're saying. I think revitalizing it was a dump. And so the fact that anyone's upset about this to me is bananas, but hey, it's because people don't get it makes me know it's the right thing. They'll get it later. They'll get it later.
In that specific place, I knew a few residents there actually, and they're definitely there's definitely like an attitude of the late 80s, early 90s kind of Venice feel to it, right? Like we're an artist community. We got this cool place in this funky neighborhood, and don't mess with it. You know what I mean? We don't want your stupid farmer's market. We don't want your just don't mess with us. And maybe that's part of it too. I don't know. Maybe it's part of that. We have this secret here. We really don't want it to get out.
I
don't know.
I just think about like
a survey of.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Diego. Well, I was just going to say, I bet if you did a survey of all of the residents, within a half a mile radius around that site, would you like this new restaurant brewery here in your neighborhood? The vast majority would say, yeah, we'd love a new venue.
We did that. Like, we literally knocked on doors. We knocked on all the doors all around the brewery. We went through the neighborhood. And because my whole thing when I start these projects is like, if you don't want me here, I don't need to be here, right? There's countless communities I can build things with less friction. And so I want them to love the concept, to love me, not make my life hard. And what's interesting is it's just like comments in the YouTube channel or something. It's like people love us. Yeah. But on Instagram, it's like, it's the 30 people that are just chirping haters. And they're just the haters. And so I'm like, cool, like I made it. I'm good. Awesome. Thank you for filling my gas tank. Cause it just really, it fuels me, which is kind of nice to some extent.
So,
That's
oh,
great.
you did a survey. So the vast majority were like, yeah, we'd love it.
We
We'd love
literally
to have
knocked on
that.
doors. I mean, we literally knocked on doors, introduced ourselves, told them what we were trying to do. People, and I don't like, it was like 95-5, like 95%
Yeah,
of the people were like, this is great. Can I get a job? This is great. I get a place to grade papers. This is great.
fantastic.
We
Yeah,
needed something like this for so long, and the other 5% were like, does this mean my rent's going up? And we're like, no, this has nothing to do with your home. Like, I don't, maybe, I don't know. I'm not your landlord, so it's hard for me to say, but probably, no, directly, no, it doesn't mean your rent goes
yeah,
up.
yeah.
And so they were like, well, we know what's coming once you improve this building. And I'm like, look, I don't know what's coming, right? There's a lot coming in Lincoln Heights. There's the Olympics coming to LA. And so it's
And
just
it's
one of
not
those
like you're
things.
it's not like you're coming over and developing a podium style, you know, mega apartment building,
Yeah.
with all brand new finishes with
Well,
at $4,200 a month for a 2 bedroom.
the thing that bothers me the most, to be honest, is like, I was that guy. Like, I was the kid in the single parent home in that neighborhood. And so when I see them react that way about me, it's just like, it's a part of me like, wow, I really look different now, right? Like, wow, they see what they want to see now. Like, it's like I show up and their filter, it's like I'm run
Interesting.
through their filter of life instead of them trying to understand, like, oh, maybe he grew up in the same neighborhood I did. Maybe he grew up in a similar situation. They
Right,
don't do that. They just go, no, he's different. And it bothers me because it's
Yeah,
like, man, if they just took a second, you know, but
yeah,
Interesting.
that's how everything goes. That's
yeah,
how the podcast goes. Like, that's how all of it, people see what they want to see.
Totally.
for sure.
What else do you guys want to riff on?
I'd love to chat a little bit about this concept that I know we're all really interested in,
Yeah.
the food court and the food halls that really seem to be a very popular thing right now. I know when I go to different locations, I kind of search them out and go check them out. It's just a great concept for a whole lot of reasons, but these really highly curated locations now where we can bring in small restaurateurs, and it's just a really cool option for people looking for alternative places to go eat and hang out. So,
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because we there's two things, at least from my childhood, that I think about. One is like either an outdoor mall that had all of your kind of favorites. Like, think about the old school Third Street Promenade down in Santa
right.
Monica, right? Where you would have a row of restaurants and then some retail and stuff like that. But we as kids, we'd go down there and hang out, have lunch, maybe see a movie, fart around down there. Or if it's the indoor malls, we had the food courts, the actual food courts. But the
Yeah.
food was
Shitty
really,
mall food.
yeah, hot dog on a stick. It was
Yeah.
kind of pretzel, pizza joint. I grew
Yeah.
up out here in when the Sherman Oaks Galleria was, in its
Yeah.
heyday. And so
Yeah.
if what you saw on Fast Times Ridgemont High is exactly what I grew up with, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so even the girls with the I knew some of those
Oh
girls.
yeah, from the 80s. Exactly.
But
I watched that movie again, by the way, a few months ago. It's still hilarious. It still holds up.
but this new, there's something really interesting right now of finding out that a lot of restaurateurs or even really good chefs, would want to take their concept into these types of spaces, and that elevates this whole thing to a different kind of level. And maybe it's because food TV has taken off and people have really gotten into different types of food. I don't know. What do you think, Diego?
Yeah.
I think about it like, I think we've entered a world where collaboration needs to exist on the food side. And so what that means is like, it's like a podcast. Like, if I have a celebrity on my podcast, they benefit from our audience and we benefit from their audience. And I think when it comes to food in general, the rising minimum wage killed restaurants a long time ago. I mean, this was like 10 years ago. Basically, the only way you could survive after construction costs and restaurant costs is if you won a Michelin star or if you were some some television or celebrity chef with a cult following. That was the only way it was going to work for you. And even then, your margins are probably 5 to 7%. I mean, which basically, in my opinion, of if I'm just going to slap finance on it, you're an artist. You're not a business. You're an artist, and which is fine. Like, I think a lot of restaurateurs view themselves to some extent as artists, or a lot of chefs. At the end of the day, I think the partnership of both needs to exist, and so I think these outdoor food halls create an ability for people to go, okay, you came for the grilled cheese, but now you found my beer. And so it allows like a ground swelling effect where things are shared, right? And so it's like there's shared seating as an example, shared labor as an example. And so it makes the economics a lot better, which means people can also get a lot more in return, more bang for buck, but also you'll have an experience. And so whether like COVID hits, obviously the outdoor thing is king now. And so it's like you can create these food halls with an outdoor scene. You can add a projector. Now it's like you can watch a baseball game or a football game and create community. It goes back to the community thing, right? You can really just make it easier for people to hang out in public, and you're giving them options. And if I'm a restaurateur, it's like I have the benefit of all these other tenants too, right? And so it gives me an ability to test, to get better at my craft, but also I'm getting 6 different audiences that I would have never got before.
Right.
Because food is so subjective. I mean, it's like if you're going out for Chinese food, you're going to put in Google Maps Chinese food. If you're going to go out for Thai food, Thai food. You're never going to stumble into something that you may have never tried. And these like outdoor venues that allow for that.
That's great. That's a great point, actually.
Yeah.
And you know, I was just thinking about that. It reminded me of the beer gardens in Europe, right? In Germany. And it's funny because you realize just the I guess the outdoor kind of community aspect of it. We've never really gotten away from that in a lot of ways, right? Even though there is a lot of indoor seating restaurants and things like that, there's still this kind of urge to, in a lot of ways, to be amongst each other.
Yeah.
You know? This is a good concept to kind of further that.
Yeah, I just call them first date spots. Like that's how I look at a lot of the development I do. It's like, is it a first date spot? If the answer is yes, I'm moving forward. If it's a third date spot, so think about a place where you go meet the parents. This is a formal sit-down dinner, right?
That's awesome.
I'm not touching it. I'm not touching it. I'm not building.
But then it comes back around and it's a married with kids spot, right? You bring the kids, you let them run around and you're hanging out, doing your own thing too.
Yeah. The third date spots I avoid. All the family stuff I love, and the first date spots I love. The in between is like, oh boy, it's a little tough.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it also makes it more approachable, I feel like, because then the product has to be cool, or it's got to be good, or you know what I mean? It's like if I'm bringing someone there for a first date, I'm kind of trying to impress somebody. And so that product, whatever it has to be best in class, or, you know, done in a unique way where it's not just coffee, it's not just beer. It's like, oh, this is really, you know, it's crafted, it's something else.
Yeah. Well, that's what's really cool to me about these new food courts is a lot of them, they put a lot of thought into the design and how it's being assembled and how it's, you know, how you're making it a comfortable, unique, entertaining environment.
Yeah. The one we talked about kind of offline was like the dog park one, which is so smart. And so it's like, imagine you have a little area, you bring your dog, everyone knows your dog's name. You can get coffee, beer, Wi-Fi, you can work. There's an area for little dogs. There's an area for big dogs. You can get grooming, training, the whole bit. And so it's like this interesting model, and especially after COVID, like during COVID, I guess 1 in like every 5 homes adopted a pet sometimes.
That's right.
And so it's just like the economy of the pets is booming, and humans will tell you interesting data in the sense of they're willing to spend more money on their pet than on themselves or on their children.
You just read my mind. And you know, what's really interesting is when you told me that it'll, you know, I think you told me something like $40 a month or something like that, you know, for the pets.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, even though they love their pets, they kvetch over a big vet bill, like some kind of catastrophic thing. Like, I don't want to spend, you know, but they'll do the monthly.
Yeah.
Right. They probably forget about the monthly too, though, right? It goes on your credit card And then, a year goes by and you realize, oh my God, it's been pulling on my credit card.
But then you can't leave. Imagine like you're used to you make friends all of a sudden at your dog park,
Totally.
getting your beer, and then all of a sudden no one's there. They're like, oh, where did Brian go? Oh no.
So that's actually a good point. Like
you start getting texts like, Brian, you okay? What's going on? I mean, it's like the accountability of it all is amazing.
Everybody's looking for a monthly, right? We've got to find a way to get a monthly subscription going, right? That.
Yeah, well, that's a great concept.
And so
the other model I'm playing with is this idea. So I don't know if you guys know this, but during Thanksgiving, turkeys are the cheapest. And I know right now in the news because of COVID, they're saying they're the highest price. But typically, turkeys do the opposite of what a normal market is. And so obviously due to Thanksgiving, the demand is the highest, and turkeys are actually the cheapest. And the reason they're the cheapest is because if you think about, let's say like you or any one of us is cooking Thanksgiving dinner and we're going to go to a grocery store, what's bringing us to the grocery store more often than not is the price of the turkey. And so the Stop and Shops, the Ralphs, the Whole Foods, whoever it might be, all these grocery store companies know that. And so they just go, okay, cool. We're going to sell Zach the 10-pound turkey at $20, and we're going to make it the cheapest because Zach's not going to come in and just buy the turkey. He's going to come in and buy $80 of other stuff. And so if we apply that to what I call like this grocery store concept where for the most part, it's like an elevated grocery store, but inside there's like a Michelin star chef that's just busting out to-go food. So you're not getting any of the experience of a Michelin star restaurant, but you are getting high quality food that's like between $11 and $18. And so it would almost be the same amount for you to purchase all the stuff, make it at home, than it would be for this amazing chef or this team to make it for you. But what happens while you're waiting for your bolognese? You're spending 3 to 10 minutes buying other stuff at this elevated grocery store that might pair well with your bolognese. And so whether it's sparkling water or a wine or chips, right? And so that's the kind of the concept I'm playing with now, where can we recreate the turkey phenomena, but in like a elevated grocery type setting. And the more I think about it, the more I like it. The more I'm like, oh, I like it. And it's the kind of place where you're not going to go and bring a stroller. You're not going to, or not like a stroller, like a grocery cart. You're just going to go and maybe to one bag stop. You go in, you get one bag, maybe two, and you're out. You're not going to go park a car, fill your trunk.
That's why, you see your can of cranberries, go from normally $1 and they're like $4.50. Do you know what I mean? And all those ancillary items are kind of jacked up, but you're getting your turkey for 35 cents a pound. Right? Yeah. That reminds me of those printer guys, right? If the printer isn't where they're making money.
Oh no.
Right.
It's the ink.
It's the ink.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Come back for more.
Yeah.
Come back for more.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. That's actually good. That's a good angle. I'm looking forward to kind of talking to you more on what you come to on that. That's interesting.
Yeah, there's a couple chefs doing something similar in Mar Vista, and so I'm actually going to meet with them tonight. I'm going to have dinner with them and see their whole menu and their spread, and then go to their grocery store and kind of get a sense of how they sent me all their financials, and it looks healthy. I mean, it all looks pretty healthy, and so I just want to see what we can kind of iterate on and see what works, what's not working.
Interesting. So they're chefs that have their own kind of small business within a larger kind of separately owned boutique type of grocery store.
It's almost like what they've done is they've become a chef first, and then they've gotten their own little celebrity on their own, and then almost like a Wolfgang Puck at Gelson's, except this would be, there would be like 3 chairs for you to actually eat at a countertop, but the counter service is like high end. It's like super high end, but there's no waiter. It's just like, I don't want to say like omakase or sushi, but in small scale like that, and the rest of it's a grocery store. And so it's really meant for takeout, not for like, you would never see 10 people outside on the patio eating. You would never see that. It was just like, but the quality is super high. And so you can slap any celebrity chef name, cook up some plates, have a rotating menu where it's like seasonal, and then kind of make it, I don't know, in theory anyway. We'll see how this all shakes up. But I like the idea of it. The idea of it to me is cooking is annoying. Cooking requires me to buy all these spices that I'm going to use once. And so let me solve that for them at the price they're willing to pay. And then if they want to enjoy other things with this meal, they can do that.
Well, with the whole COVID takeout, where takeout has become so popular, this solves the problem of not having to have a full restaurant space if you really just want to target takeout.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's what I wanted to do. I mean, it seems to make sense, right? I think it's like a derivative of the post-COVID restaurant meets grocery world, where you're walking, you're not driving. I don't know. I think it makes sense. It feels right. It's almost there, but I like it.
Yeah, I like it. It's similar to a ghost kitchen, but it's different in that there's a convenience element because you got to go to the grocery store to get stuff anyway, and so you can get your dinner there as well. Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring that up because like the Uber Eats model. So if I am a celebrity chef, Uber Eats has probably brokered a deal with me that's a little bit more favorable to me than a mom and pop with no name. And so what ends up happening is not to say you have economies of scale, but you have like economies of clout, which is interesting. And so it allows for it to be, so I'm learning about this now because this chef has that and they have good deals with these companies that, are not always very favorable to the restaurant takeout world.
Yeah. You mean they have good deals that they pass along to their customers, or good deals meaning they're getting a bigger cut?
They're getting a bigger cut. They've negotiated their commission, and it's much lower than what everyone else is paying.
I think that there's room to, I don't know, being a customer of those services and finding myself shying away from using those services a lot because of the add-on fees. I think that there's space in there to undercut a lot of that if you can get people into their cars and down to where they need to be to pick up the food.
Yeah.
I have no problem. I'll probably drive up to 5 miles, probably 6 miles to go get food that my wife wants. Wow. Right. I mean, I'll do it because we look at Chow Now or Uber Eats or whatever, a $40 meal ends up being $70, just because of the fees that they tack on. And I'm all for everybody making their money. Do you know what I mean? But like, there's room in there, I think, to find a way to.
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of restaurants here in West Hollywood basically banned them. They just wouldn't. They decided collectively not to use them, which I think was really cool. And so, and the logic was more of like, look, we love the apps. We want people to access our food. That is, everybody wants that. The problem was if I'm like high end and my average ticket is $100, right? And you're, let's say, a pizza shop and your average ticket is $20, why are we paying the same fee? That was the problem, right? These things should be, these things like if you're a $20 pizza maker, you shouldn't pay $10 fees. And if I'm a $100 average ticket, why am I paying the same thing you're paying? It makes no sense. And so, they were trying to get the DoorDashes, the Uber Eats, the Postmates of the world to really understand it needs to be, you need to dig into the data a little bit more. You can't treat everyone the same way. There has to be some sort of, if it's either a flat rate and everybody pays the same rate, and maybe it's a little bit less for people whose average ticket is lower, but it can't be this, we treat everyone the same, because that doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't, that's not how it works.
I that's so funny because and you come from the tech world, so you know this, but like when the guys dropped off my Peloton and they were discussing, what they were basically saying, we're not an exercise company. We're not a bicycle exercise company. We're a tech company that sells these bicycles, but our, the meat and potatoes is in this screen that we're putting on the top of your bicycle. And that's kind of the same. Maybe that's kind of the same that like,
I mean, Tesla's doing the same thing. I mean, they're a tech company. I mean, to the extent that like they're even rolling out insurance, they're going to become an insurance company. They're going to have an insurance arm that's going to be based off the data that your car is providing their company. And what I love about that is there is, but what I love about it is they're obviously going to give everyone the cheapest rates for like 5 years, like obviously,
totally.
Right? Because everyone's afraid of like, oh no, what if I'm an aggressive driver? Tesla's going to love you. They're going to be like, we're going to give this guy a great rate, right? This gal a great rate, and we're going to create that because now we're playing like the LTV game, right? The lifetime value of the customer. We already got them at the car. We already got them everywhere else. Now we can just make this super cheap. It's amazing.
I think there's a lot of insurance companies that have gotten burned though after one or two really giant lawsuits. they start managing their risk a little bit better. But in terms of the you know, the Uber Eats guys and things like that, I really wonder how on the ground, you know, do they come from food backgrounds and are they really tied in to really understand that stuff? Or is it that same thing? We're a tech company and we do have to feed the beast to our investors. So we got to keep those margins really, really high because a lot of people are pulling from it. I don't know, you know.
I mean, the biggest problem, look, I think the problem that I've identified in talking to both sides of this is restaurants aren't run like businesses. That's literally it. And when labor rates went up, the restaurants didn't charge more because the problem is like restaurants live in what I call the instant feedback loop that they never escape. And so what that means is if I give you a salad and you don't like it, I know immediately I'm offended. If I give you a pasta bowl and you're the kind of consumer that's used to bringing some home so that you could have it for lunch tomorrow, and all of a sudden that portion is smaller, now you're offended. Now you're giving me a bad Yelp review. If you paid too little, or if you paid, or not too little, but if you paid too much for something where you didn't get a doggy bag, you're going to tell me about that on Yelp. And so what happens is the restaurant owners live in this little world, let's call it a little goldfish tank, where that's all they're used to. They're used to basically bad news. They're used to the haters of the world. And so they listen because that's their customer, because they don't like bad Yelp reviews. They don't like 4, 3, 2 stars on Google, right? And so they end up doing this thing where they're constantly afraid to raise prices. It reminds me of like the most classic example of this is like barbershops, right? You probably went to the same barber for 5 years and it was $10 every time. And then all of a sudden it was 12. And everyone was like, oh, what the hell, Bob? Come on, dude, $12? Like, you gotta be kidding me. I gotta spend 50 cents more on gas to get here now. Like, it's not even a $2 better haircut, right? And so the barbershops feel this every year, where the barbershops could have, and like, the problem is the barbershops should have said every year we're going to go up $1. That's how we're going to operate. That would have made more sense. But they don't do that. They hold and then they pivot. And then that leap feels like way too much to the consumer. And so restaurants live in this world where they've just been not making the right moves because they're afraid to alienate customers. Yeah. And because of that, Uber is making that, like Uber, Postmates are just making that problem. They're just exacerbating it. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
And they're also those profits more and more marginalized and thinner.
Yeah, because then you start doing other things, right? Let's say you're a restaurateur. You go, okay, let me talk to Chuck about buying more pasta in bulk, right? You start going the other way. You start going, let me get things at a bigger discount, instead of going, no, just charge the customer. Like, stop doing this. Stop trying to get more tomato sauce for cheaper. Stop doing that.
Well, I wonder what percentage of restaurateurs are jacking up the prices now, like taking advantage of this whole inflationary environment. So you were mentioning the barbershop. My haircutter, they recently significantly raised the price, like 25%. But, you know, as a customer, I'm like, well, where else am I going to go? She knows how to cut my hair and, you know, it's COVID. I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think, I think DoorDash is the one, I'm not sure, but DoorDash, basically, they go, okay, we're going to get 20%, and so we're just going to mark up everything 20%. So if your pizza's like $10 usually, now it's not $10. Now it's $12. And so the customer sees, but this is a different problem. So now the customer sees something for $12 that if they go to this restaurant all the time, they know it's 10.
Right.
But then when it comes to checkout and the fees are way less. And so it's like everyone's trying to figure out how to hide it when the reality is like they should just be better businesses. And I think that would solve it. Or they should just be more like, you know, it's so funny. Everyone wants minimum wage to go up for some weird reason, but no one wants to feel the effects of what happens when minimum wage goes up. It's everyone's like, yeah, minimum wage, $18 an hour. The wealth are getting or whatever, like all this story. And it's just like, but you don't want to pay $8 for a latte, or do you? Oh, no, we don't want to do that. Oh, then, okay. Where do you think the costs are going to be offset? You know, businesses it's not like businesses are thriving when when minimum wage goes up. Your business, your favorite coffee shops gets harder to run, in fact, when that happens.
Well, that's because there's also so many choices that things have become very commoditized, especially food.
Yeah.
Right. And so the service, the pizza shop is, I mean, we got a great pizza shop down the road and it's better than most, but in a pinch, we would go to one or two of the others without any problems, and probably, they're competing with each other at the same price level. And so the value isn't really as apparent as some other things that aren't as commoditized, or the restaurants that do stand up for themselves or have a hook or something like that,
Right.
Right on, man. This has been great.
Yeah, this has been terrific, Diego.
It's been
Thanks
an awesome
for coming
conversation.
on.
Yeah, of course.
And being able to riff a little bit more than our ongoing meetings is cool, So thank you so much for jumping on with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This has been super fun. I always say these things are like therapy sessions, frankly.
Totally.
Right.
Absolutely.
Like either people walk away with like, oh man, Diego needs a lot of help, or they're like, wow, another person thinks like me. This has been great. Awesome.
Exactly.
Or both of us need a lot of help.
Yeah.
Well, right on, man. Well, thank you. I just followed you on Instagram. Tell everybody how they can find you on the various social medias and things in the interwebs.
Yeah, our podcast is called Startup to Storefront. We're literally everywhere. And so whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, so Startup to Storefront. And then I'm just at Diego_Ventures, where you'll see everything we have going on. So we have podcast stuff on there and we have development stuff on there. We also invest in some early startups. So we have sometimes some of that on there. And yeah, that's about it.
Cool.
Awesome.
Perfect, man. Well, great stuff. Thank you so much, bud.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Diego.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
10X for Gen XYZ is hosted by Zach Winter and Markader Rios, co-founders of Prosperity CRE, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and building long-term wealth. If you like the podcast, please give us a positive rating and subscribe to be notified about future content. Also, if you'd like to learn more about our approach to real estate investing, you can download a free copy of our real estate investment book, Investing for Cash Flow and Long-Term Wealth, by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thank you and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes.